All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
It is the Mark Thompson Show. I'm Kim McAllister, and I have searched high and low for a fill-in talk show host, and lo and behold, Chip Franklin answered the call. Chip Franklin joins us, everybody. He is.
I was not the first person she called. Let's just put it that way.
Well, I haven't worked with you for a while, so it was hard, and I did call my friend Nikki, and she said you got to call Chip. So there you go. I called you, and I haven't worked with you for a while, and when she mentioned your name, I thought that's going to be really fun because it's been since KGO days since we've worked together.
Been a while. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
5 years, almost to the date when I was fired. Well, I think I was fired in 2014. Yeah, but it's been insane. And watching, there's been a disintegration of normalcy, I think, in the last 10 years since Trump entered in it, and it's. A lot of people thought talk radio was dead, really, in the mid-teens, and Trump kind of brought it back in a way, at least for the left side, which I consider myself on now. I never used to, but I do now. Mm-hmm. And so it's interesting. It's great to see you again and to hear about the Bay Area, because I lived up there for 8 years, and that was, and now I miss it. But I'm down in San Diego, and at San Diego, let me tell you this real quick here before we get to our first topic.
Please.
I'm a Commanders fan. I'm originally from DC, and I know there's a lot of 49ers fans here. And I was rooting for them hard because they were playing Philadelphia, and I hate Philadelphia. But so this is what I do. If I don't know who to root for, I go and I find out whether or not that city voted for Harris or Trump. and so it's crazy. So I got to root. Although San Francisco, this is great. San Francisco and Chicago were almost exactly identical for who they voted. I think it was like 81% voted for Harris and like 19% for Trump. But surprised me, like Jacksonville was almost 50-50.
Wow.
They were just a half a percentage point for Trump, which surprised me from Northern Florida, right? So it's an interesting way. Just goes to show you when you have that much time on your hands,
how you figure out who to root for. Well, this weekend, the 49ers won and also the Rams won.
Yeah, it's like, for us, it's down here. The Rams are, the Chargers are really still in our minds, still in San Diego. And, and I'm not a huge Charger fan, but because everybody in my neighborhood is, I was rooting for him last night, and that was tough to see. That young kid from New England, May, was a remarkable young athlete. But it was fun to watch the last. You got to root for Purdy, the last pick in the draft.
Yep.
Way overperforms expectations, which I love because half these guys that are their job is to find people don't know what they're doing really. Did you see Moneyball?
Yes.
Remember when they're sitting around that table and they're talking about the players and this guy's got a good looking girlfriend, so he must have. That's a lot of it, really. Anyway, but yeah, so there's people listening here that are rooting for the Rams. That makes sense because they originally were from Los Angeles before they went to St. Louis and then came back. So that kind of makes sense. It's not like the Raiders, where they went to LA and back to Oakland. This was St. Louis doesn't really have that same sort of stink that Oakland does in the sports world. But anyway, so it's great to see that. And it's, but right now the 49ers are their exciting team. And they're of course playing Seattle, which I know Nikki hates vehemently. And I would imagine a lot of you do as well. Yeah. The brackets. Yeah. Did you see this, by the way, speaking of the brackets, on the Golden Globes last night, they had the percentage of people winning. It's not bad enough. I got to see DraftKings predicting every play and what professional gambling is doing to the sport right now. But to see it in the world of art, whose idea was that? Was that CBS?
Did you like the Golden Globes? Because I missed it. Did you see it?
Yeah, I like Nikki Glaser. I think she did a good job. That's a tough gig,
Yeah.
And I it's so funny. Wanda Sykes coming out and trashing Bill Maher, which she should, because Maher's an A, and then also going after Ricky Gervais for his anti-trans stuff. But can I tell a real quick story?
No, please go ahead.
So this is when I grew up in DC, And
Yeah.
I've been a comic since like.
So did Mark, by the way.
Oh, I didn't know that. Mark did?
Yeah.
Oh, we got to talk about that. I didn't
He's
know
a DC guy. Yeah, that's right. Anyway, go ahead. Carry on.
Anyway, so I started out at a place called Garvin's Comedy Club in 1979. And when I was there, I started out as a musician playing in between the comedians, people like Eddie Murphy and Joe Piscopo and Jerry Seinfeld, who was actually pretty big already at that time. He'd already done a night show, I think. But there was one night I was on stage and I had to bring up this kid. He was 13 years old to do stand-up, and he killed. He was really great. And I was like, that kid's going to be something. And of course, it was Dave Chappelle. And but I was greatly disappointed in Chappelle's anti-trans comments. In fact, when I was on KGO, I made a point of that, a hard attack on him and what he did. I think we as comics should punch up always, right? You don't punch down, you punch up. So I said all that. And so I would, at one point, I was actually flying back home on weekends because my wife had gone back down to San Diego. And so this particularly, I would fly back for my show, which started at 3 to 6. And I would walk up Battery Street. For those of you who know the city, from the BART, I would walk all the way up Battery Street to the corner of Battery and Broadway where our studios were. So I'm walking up the street and I look up, and who's walking right at me but Dave Chappelle. Of course, he has a group of guys with him. And this was the 2 days after I'd said this stuff. So, he doesn't remember me, but I stop him and I say, hey, blah, blah, blah. And we start talking about people. And it made me realize about the job we have and the people we talk about, because we don't really know them, most of the time. And I hadn't seen Chappelle in 40 years, And so it was interesting to talk to him. And he seemed really genuinely, pleased to hear me and to talk. And I didn't want that to pull away because I was running late. And it got me thinking about, the jobs we have and the things we talk about. And I don't hold back at all. If you go to my Twitter page, I mean, it's like I explode on people. I mean, just what happened in Minnesota, we should all be in the streets today.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. And that little story made me think of, just whenever I'm talking about somebody, like right now, I'm going after the former governor of Maryland, who is a Trumper. And when I knew him, he seemed like a real decent guy. My wife and I went to the governor's mansion once. He's a Republican, and now he's insane. And so, I mean, these are the times. There's a disintegration of I can't even
morality.
What is it?
A disintegration of morality.
Yeah, but I mean, also just the discourse has become so coarse, and that's sad. I really find it makes me sad. But anyway, back to sports, and you had the thing up there. So this weekend's going to be great. Tonight's going to be great because everybody with character or integrity hates Aaron Rodgers. So you got to root, right? Right? I mean, the anti-vax freak. Am I coming too hard now?
No. Go ahead. Carry on.
No, I mean, he's a freak, and he's just the stuff he says and the way he acts. And it was, when they beat the Ravens, and I actually produce a Ravens podcast, and it just made me sad because, of course, Baltimore's a dump too, but that's a whole nother story. Anyway,
Noe, our friend Noe is excited to see you. She says, Chip with
Noe. I love Noe. Yes.
Awesome. Luis has got a contribution as well. Thank you, Luis, for the 5, and thank you, Noe, for the 5. Luis says, so Jay Powell is being investigated for illegal renovations, yet we're cool with the White House being turned into a Liberace-inspired opium den. WTF. So true. Thank you, Luis, for the 5. And that really brings us, Chip, to the situation with the Department of Justice investigating Jerome Powell. And we have a package, and then I'm going to ask your opinion. Go ahead, Tony.
Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell confirms he's now under criminal investigation by the Justice Department. He said officials are looking into testimony he gave to Congress in June about the Federal Reserve's renovation of its D.C. headquarters. But Powell claimed the probe is actually tied to, quote, threats and ongoing pressure by the Trump administration.
The threat of criminal charges is a consequence of the Federal Reserve setting interest rates based on our best assessment of what will serve the public, rather than following the preferences of the president.
CBS News correspondent Natalie Brand joins us from the White House with the latest on this. Natalie, it's quite unprecedented to see a move and a probe of this sort. What else is Powell saying about it, and what is the White House response?
Yeah, and the Fed chair is revealing this new information in a video statement. You saw a clip of it released late last night in which he says that the Department of Justice served the Federal Reserve with grand jury subpoenas related to that congressional testimony about these ongoing renovations. As you may recall, those renovations have been under intense scrutiny by Trump administration officials who have called them costly and ostentatious. Some have even alleged it may be violating the law. Now, Powell disputes all that and described this new probe as unprecedented action, which he says should be seen in the broader context of the administration's threats and ongoing pressure related to interest rates and lowering interest rates. A DOJ spokesperson in a statement did not specifically reference this case, but said that the Attorney General has instructed her U.S. attorneys to prioritize investigating any abuse of taxpayer dollars. But lawmakers across both sides of the aisle are sounding the alarm. Republican Tom Tillis said this in a statement in part: if there were any remaining doubt whether advisors within the Trump administration are actively pushing to end the independence of the Federal Reserve, there should be none. Other lawmakers warn that undermining that independence could destabilize markets. Now, President Trump told NBC News in a phone call Sunday night that he didn't know about this probe. As you may recall, it was President Trump who appointed Powell as Fed chair during his first term. But since then, he's repeatedly criticized him and has floated even firing him as recently as last month, Errol.
All right.
All right. Thank you so much, Tony. So, Chip, what is this? Do you believe that Trump didn't know about the DOJ going after Powell, number one?
Of course not. But first of all, I would love to hear Trump even try to say ostentatious, but that's a whole nother thing. And why do we have a British guy on CBS? I mean, not that I care, but I mean, is it just no one else will work for them now?
No, we like that guy, though. He's got a great accent.
I know he does. All right. So a couple things. First of all, it's all about interest rates. Okay. There's not everything else is just the way Trump operates. You know, he's like, there's nothing. He's afraid to fire him because of the political ramifications of what that means, what it'll do to the market. You know, the market will drop precipitously if he fires Powell like that. Most people so when we're talking about the Fed interest rates, right? The Fed doesn't set the interest rates that you can get a loan with. Okay. That's not what it works. What the Fed does, it regulates the interest rates from which banks can borrow money from other banks. Okay. So oftentimes a bank will lend, they have to keep a certain amount in reserve. They can lend up to a certain amount to people, right? But they have to keep some in reserve. When they get to a point where they want to lend more, if they want to borrow money so they can lend more, they borrow it from other banks. So what the Fed does is they control the interest rates for that borrowing from bank to bank. If they were to allow the interest rate to drop to a point where it was much easier for people to get loans, of course, that increases the demand for homes, which pushes the prices up. When you start pushing prices up, you get inflation. And inflation predominantly hurts people below the median income level, right? Because obviously they have less money and inflation hurts them even worse. It doesn't hurt billionaires. In fact, it's an opportunity for billionaires because what happens when people can't buy things, businesses go out of business, right? And that it's opportunities for larger businesses like Bezos and, Zuckerberg and Musk and the rest of the billionaire trillionaires. It allows them an opportunity to take advantage of these economic consequences. So this is exactly what Trump wants to do for his friends. This is so freaking transparent, right? So what I mean, by the way, Janet Yellen, a former head of the Fed, once said Trump had absolutely no idea of how macroeconomics works, as evidenced by his tariffs. He said he brought in $20 trillion. I mean, it's not even close to the truth. It's not even in the same universe as the truth. And think about that. If that were true, how would that fall onto the backs of regular Americans? The prices for everything they wanted would have to go up. Those other countries cannot afford to do that. Did we just switch sides?
Yeah, I switched you. And now I'm going to make myself small. There you go. Carry on. Keep talking.
Anyway, so I don't believe any of that. The DOJ, all that's all BS, right? Yeah. And I guarantee you, Bondi has no idea what any of this is we're talking about either.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that because she's a blonde. Okay. She obviously, she came into this whole thing crooked anyway. The only reason she got the attorney general gig is because she dropped the charges against Trump University when she's attorney general of Florida. And the reason she did that is because Trump gave $25,000 to her reelection campaign. To her election campaign. So, this is not hard to find. This is not a difficult jigsaw puzzle to put together.
So if indeed it is about interest rates, and if the president and the Department of Justice, the president says he didn't know this was going to happen, but whatever, if
who believes that though?
I know, nobody. If the administration can threaten the chair of the Federal Reserve, have we lost the independence of the Fed? And why is that important? And what is the significance of having a Fed that then has to kowtow to the president, whoever that person may be?
Well, it's what it does is ultimately it works against Trump. What he loves to talk about the stock market, but what does the stock market hate more than anything? Uncertainty. They do. It does amaze me. I was looking at it today and just to see where it is. And I think that they have such faith that Trump will have their back right now, that the market is up 23 points today. So it's kind of flat. They don't know what to do. But in the past, this would have been a 500-point drop. But they know Trump will consistently do things to help investment. Whether it's something like this with, putting this indication out there that the Fed is going to have to drop interest rates. That's great. The Fed loves that. That's more money into companies that are on the S&P or the NASDAQ. This is a real opportunity for Trump to help his friends. You don't think that Trump is doing this because he really cares about economic growth for the country, right? We all know that by now. Why haven't we seen enough? The emoluments clause has been through the shredder so many times. It's a joke. Do you know by the way, the emoluments clause, which is in the U.S. Constitution, which says the president can't go out and make money off being president. That's all fine and dandy, but there's actually no provision to do anything to the person that does that violates it. There's no criminal statute.
No enforcement.
It's like saying you can't kill people, but if you do, I can't do anything if you do. So
what I found when I was just watching that piece was the hypocrisy when they're talking about the ostentatious nature of the renovations that Powell is making to the Fed Chair building or what have you. And as Luis mentioned, the ballroom, you want to talk ostentatious and something no one asked for. You could make an argument that a federal building needed to be upgraded, but did we really need a new gold-laden ballroom? And how can you punish one person for that when you yourself, Trump, are doing even that, but in a more egregious fashion?
I don't know. You're right about that. I got to go to the White House once for a state dinner. Not that it was because of me. A friend of mine was a musician playing for Clinton. And so my wife and I got to go, and I was surprised, just how average it was in there. It's obviously really cool, I've never taken a tour, but we did get to go there, and it was interesting. And so I can understand that, you want to renovations are important, but this is not about that. This is what Trump does.
Yeah.
The whole idea of it. The perfect example would be, his golf courses. He cares so much about these, and and so much money comes out of the tax revenue just to pay the Secret Service agents and his travel. And by now it's in the hundreds of millions of dollars in the 10 years that he's been in the 8 years or 6 years now that he's been in and out of the White House. But I don't know. I think that then, with all that's going on right now, it's hard for me to focus on something like, the East Wing. I'm more worried about what's happening in the Oval Office, with Stephen Miller and Steve Bannon over his shoulder. Did you just see where Steve Bannon is thinking about a 2028 run?
I did see that.
Yeah.
He's got to challenge Vance and Rubio, I guess, to throw his hat in the ring for the 2028 bid. That would be scary. But you know what? As asinine as that sounds, as ridiculous as that sounds, to have a President Bannon, I never thought we'd see a second round of President Trump. So you can't look away from it. You can't, poo-poo it, because God forbid it actually happens.
Yeah, it's interesting. When we look back on this, I think, a lot of people are going to point their fingers at Trump, understandably, and watch his declining mental acuity. And the latest thing came out today where he couldn't. Did you see that interview where he couldn't remember that he promised Americans $2,000? He's like, I said that. But it's obviously it's not that.
Yeah.
In the Republican Party, you have two polar opposites, and I'll take two figures like Liz Cheney and Lindsey Graham. And 2015, Liz Cheney was the liberals' enemy. She ended up voting in the early years with Trump 95% of the time. But apparently, even people like Cheney have a line that they will not cross, and Trump obliterated the line.
Yep.
And we saw her reaction, and people like Kinzinger, and it used to be that the difference between liberals and conservatives, it started out, that Social Security was the third rail. A third rail, of course, referring to, we all know that in the Bay Area, you don't go down and touch that middle rail because you'll be electrocuted. So people stayed away from that. But you look at, some of the things that have since come, like we all used to say abortion was a third rail thing, right? But then again, that got to the point where with social media, you could say whatever you wanted about it. I mean, we had people saying that California allows children to be born and then killed.
That's not true.
People that believe that, and they talked about it on shows on Fox News like it was real. I mean, again, that's that balance. It's be able, when you can bring something up and then conclusively say that no, that's BS. Well, the problem is that there's people watching this. As Trump said, I love the uneducated, the poorly educated. I think that there's, and I don't mean this I really don't mean to disparage people who don't have college educations. I didn't graduate college. I think though there's something to look at this and to say that these are people who have looked for somebody that didn't talk like George W. Bush or Bill Clinton, that talked like they did. And they just don't understand the machinations behind running a government. There's a great book by Michael Lewis called The Fifth Risk, or The Fifth Risk, which talks about, all the other things we have to worry about, everything from, pandemics to nuclear war. But the one that he talked about, and this is before, right when Trump was about to come into office, was what if somebody didn't know how to run the government and ran it poorly? What would happen? Well, we're seeing that. We're seeing everything from now, like if you deport all these people from the Central Valley, not, just south of San Francisco and north of me, and you go through there and you realize that we're the fifth largest economy in the world. And we provide food for a good chunk of the world. And the revenue and the tax revenue from that allows states like Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana to have good public schools with federal dollars. It comes from us. So there's so many things going on that Trump is involved in. Like, I mean, again, you simply go back to Powell and these interest rates, right? We saw what happened in 2008 when something collapses. I think it was $5 trillion disappeared. Money that was like, we all think it's like, that our savings is in the bank and like gold bullion. It's not. It's on a ledger sheet of paper. It could disappear if a bank fails. It's a really weird place we find ourselves right now. And when I hear, Trump, and I hear, the other end of that, like Lindsey Graham talk, a guy who started out, hating Trump and now supports him. And then you look at what Vance is saying. We'll get to Minnesota in a minute, but and you hear them talk about the economy, and I wonder to myself, are they really that cowed, or they just really don't understand how it works?
Oh, Tony has the book cover up. The fifth, what is it? The Fifth Risk.
Amazing book.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
The Fifth Risk. Speaking of authors, we have a wonderful author coming up later in the show. Sarah Kendzior will join us in the second hour. And I don't know if you have read her work before, but she is amazing. I highly recommend her book.
I've seen her on Substack. Yeah.
Yeah, The View from Flyover Country, Hiding in Plain Sight. They Knew, The Last American Road Trip, her most recent book. We'll talk to Sarah in the second hour. But you mentioned Trump's cognitive issues, and I wanted to play you this video. I don't know if you saw this, but this is where there was some type of meeting, cabinet meeting, or meeting between Trump and the oil executives, and Rubio passes Trump a note, a private note. right, to direct him to where to go next. And Trump just like has no couth or smooth skills at all and reads the note out loud. And it is the look on Rubio's face, this like cringe moment. Go ahead, Tony.
The governor of Cuba?
Yeah. There you go.
All right, thank you. You'll make it back one way or the other. You're all going to do very well. I think really very well. Marco just gave me a note. Go back to Chevron. They want to discuss something. Go ahead. I'm going back to Chevron.
Well, the look on Marco Rubio's face is like, oh, did you have to read that out loud? Awkward. Just so awkward.
Do you ever see there was a podcast out on our Really American YouTube network called Shrinking Trump. And this guy, Dr. John Gartner, I used to host that thing with him for a while. And to look at his, he's a malignant narcissist and a sociopath. And we see it all the time. He has very little empathy for anybody. And to watch him stab people in the back. I mean, he did it in the past, and they all, of course, everybody from Vance to, he did it recently with Vance, in the last year, saying he didn't think he'd be a good person to run in 2028. And Rubio, little Marco, the whole thing. I just don't get these guys. Don't they see what's happening and the way the tide is turning? Or are they so fully vetted? Are they so fully in the Trump camp that they can't escape now? Do you think they just have to ride this out?
I think they're what we call fair weather fans that hop on the bandwagon when it benefits them, and when it doesn't, they'll find a way to distance themselves. So
that's a really nice way I was putting it, I guess.
I really think that's true. Like, you see all these people that are like, part of the Trump administration, and we're doing it. And then if Trump falls out of favor, or, if after Trump leaves office, if he leaves office, when he leaves office, I'm going to cross my fingers for that. They'll find a way to make it not as bad, or to then turn around and criticize when they couldn't stand up right now when it mattered. They'll find a way to distance themselves, Chip. I think that will happen.
Yeah, but I don't think we'll allow that. I think that especially after the good shooting in Minneapolis. The George Floyd, you talk to African Americans. I was really not surprised at all to see African Americans come and support the movement to get justice for Renee Good, because they've seen it their whole lives. They've seen it in almost every state in this country where African Americans are shot by law enforcement, and nothing happens to the police officers, and there's nothing fundamentally changed in the way that they're, they deal or interact with Black Americans. But I think that you have to look at this, and you have to say to yourself, where is that tipping point? Have we already reached it? Is this the tipping point?
I thought the tipping point, Chip, would have been January 6th. And I remember talking to a family member when Trump was running for a second time and saying, how could you possibly ever think that you could vote for this person responsible for trying to stop the vote, trying to steal our voices, trying to dismantle our system of democracy? How could you think that this would be a person to vote for? And he said, we have to let it go. We can't just hold on to it forever. Personally, yes, I can hold on to that forever and will hold on to that forever. So when you say we can't let them forget, I think it's very easy when people are looking for, what they want politically, or feeling anger for some reason, to let stuff like that go.
I think there is a tipping point, and I think we've reached it, and it's like a cancer in the Trump circle, and it's the Epstein files. And even though we're not really talking about that today, because there's just so much.
Please talk about it. Bring it up.
Well, you look back at the Venezuela. They have larger oil reserves in Saudi Arabia or the United States, and we don't want their oil to sell. We don't want their oil on the market. Because when their oil is not on the market, and Russia even gets benefits from this, all the others get more money per gallon, right? Per barrel. And so, you can look at this, and people talk about distractions, and I don't think it's actually coordinated as an obvious distraction, but we've heard Bannon say it. I wish I had the video with me. I can't play it right now, but I have Bannon and Ezra Klein both talking about this, not to each other, but talking about, Bannon said it out loud. We just, the media is not that smart. We just keep throwing stuff at them, and they'll forget about the stuff we want them to forget about. And Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump were close friends. Epstein lied in the Ghislaine Maxwell trial about never being on her plane. It turned out he was on the plane 8 times. We don't have evidence that he was on the island, but we know that he was at parties where there were young girls. We have the testimony of a 13-year-old girl who said he assaulted her. I mean, there's a lot there. And every American, and you've seen it now, the shaman dude from the January 6th, he's turned on Trump now, and he turned on him specifically because of Epstein. He still supports him on everything else, but he turned him on Epstein. And I think that's going to be around, and that's not going to go away. And I think, again, Bondi and you look at Bongino. I mean, I'd love to talk to that guy, even though he blocked me on all social media. I'd love to talk to Dan. I met him in 2016 in Cleveland at the Republican National Convention, and talked to him for a little bit about stuff. It's like a lot of these guys, you get them away. I used to talk to Charlie Kirk. He followed me on Twitter, and it was a kid, he's a kid, and he had no idea what he's doing. I mean, if I was in that position at that age, how I would F up tremendously. When I got into talk radio in 1993, in Washington, D.C., I had no experience. I was a comedian. They gave me a job at night in the nation's capital. I didn't know what to do. And then OJ killed his wife and the world changed. To me, that was the tipping point of talk radio, because all of a sudden you had everything. And after that, it was just, then you had the Oklahoma City bombing, you had Y2K, you had the 2000 election, you had 2001, and it just took off. And you look back now and you look at the things that we all said. I used to throw away the backup tapes after some shows. I'd sneak in there and take it and throw it away. I mean, we all learn on the fly doing this. So I'm not going to, but the key is, at some point you got to just stop and say to yourself, it's not right. This shouldn't be said. And to hear Vance or to hear Trump say that the cop that she supposedly hit with the truck was in the hospital. He wasn't hit. I mean, we've all seen it. He shot right in the windshield and shot twice through the side windshield.
Hilo Karen says ICE murdering a white woman should be the tipping point for the MAGAs, but will it be? Do they really believe Trump, etc., that it was the victim's fault? So let's turn into it. Let's talk about Minnesota.
Did you see Jetty? The perfect place. I think the gaslighting by Fox News. When we look back on that, Fox News, of course, will be a central figure in Trump's ascendancy, through to this point, because in the past we had, 3-4 networks, newspapers that could give the facts, and people would go there for the facts. But the people didn't like the facts they were seeing. They didn't like seeing African Americans and gay people, LGBTQ, whatever, becoming more prominent in our lives. It still blows their mind. They still can't handle it. And they still look at it as, this is what Trump still says. He still says, tranny for everyone, or so what he calls it. He says transsexual for anyone or something like that. When I think about this, I think that this is brilliant. They don't talk about the things that they'll lose on. So they just talk about the stuff that scares their base, and they do it so well. So when I think about, Vance saying that the cop was totally justified, and then you see the video, I just wonder, I wonder if the people that we need to see the video in these purple states, especially, I wonder if they see it and they go, what else is he lying about? This is a horrific act that happened. This woman was not a threat to anyone, and to have Jesse Waters say that she was not fit to be a mother because she was a lesbian and she didn't have all of her, I think she had 4 kids and not all of them lived with her. I think some lived with the father. That to intimate, or no, not intimate, he said that right out loud, that she's an unfit mother, not talking at all about the fact that she was shot in cold blood in the face, So I don't know. I hope you're right. And I think that, I think black people are looking at white people now and saying, you get an idea what it's like, what cops have been doing to us for, since Jim Crow. I don't know.
Did you hear what Trump had to say about disrespecting law enforcement? And I saw a headline on Huffington Post that said that Trump said that anyone who disrespects police officers or law enforcement officers deserves this type of treatment. I don't think that's exactly what he said.
Did he see Brian Sicknick on January the 6th? Did he see these people trying to gouge the eyes out of My dad was a Capitol policeman, by the way. So I have some skin in this. Did he see that? I mean, the hypocrisy of what you just said right now contrasted on January 6th, where they were trying to kill policemen defending our Capitol.
Here's Trump. Take a listen.
Do you believe that deadly force is necessary after watching all the footage a few days have passed? What's your assessment there?
It was highly disrespectful of law enforcement. The woman and her friend were highly disrespectful of law enforcement. You saw that? They were harassing them, were following for days and for hours. And I think, frankly, they're professional agitators.
But just disrespect.
And I'd like to find out, and we are going to find out who's paying for it.
But just disrespect.
With their brand new signs and all the different things. But these are professional agitators, and law enforcement should not be in a position where they have to put up with this stuff. What that woman and what her friend and what their other friends were doing to law enforcement, not just ICE, law enforcement is outrageous.
Now, what I didn't hear him say is that disrespect toward law enforcement is punishable by death, which is what the headline says. But what I did hear him say is that they were disrespectful to law enforcement. But I don't think that means they needed to be shot. You can be disrespectful. I would say it's probably not a good idea, but you can be disrespectful. You can protest, right? But what did they do that would mean that they needed to be shot to death?
Chris Rock had a joke once where he said that people say that, most cops are good. I mean, there's a few bad apples. And he goes, really? You want bad apples in the police? Would you say the same thing about pilots of airlines? Hey, we're United Airlines. We fly anywhere you want to go. Sure, some of our pilots aren't very good. I mean, there's a
couple that suck in there, but overall, you'll get where you're going.
To put it in, look, and again, I do believe that there are a lot of police officers that should not be in the job. In Washington, D.C., 15 years ago, they were actually hiring people that had felony convictions. They weren't doing their due process on background investigations. So, I mean, and we've all seen these ads. If you want to join ICE, they're not. Somebody just quoted on here, but it was great. They're not law enforcement. They have no right to do anything other than immigration. Okay, they're again. It's immigration customs enforcement. They're not. They can't deal with drugs. They're not out there to control crowds. Their job, again, they're wearing masks. That's another thing too. Who wears masks except for cowards and criminals? Why are they wearing masks? My dad, when he was in Vice, they used to arrest mafia drug dealers, guys that are to the mob. They didn't wear masks, and again. These are people now that don't even have the basic decency. I say this with barely my tongue in my cheek of the mafia. The mafia would never go after families. These guys, they're shooting mothers. They're shooting women. Mafia dons, they would never allow that. This is the lowest of the low. And for anybody to suggest that this woman was a threat to this guy, why does he jump in front of their car? They jump so they can shoot. This is, again, when you hear the story of the Kyle Rittenhouses that show up, if any of these people had a gun, do you think Trump would have said he had a right to come in there and to try to stop what ICE is doing? Again, what is the role of ICE? I mean, are they really? They're supposed to get cartel members? How come they're arresting laborers and gardeners and dishwashers? Yeah. What threat do they pose to this country?
Well, now ICE, according to Kristi Noem, the Department of Homeland Security, is sending hundreds more ICE agents into Minneapolis. So, that's going to be a
By the way, my wife's flying there tomorrow.
Oh, great. And then we have, I don't know if you saw this comment. This was made by the Philadelphia sheriff. Did you see this one? The Philadelphia sheriff said, we are going to protect our citizens from ICE coming in and acting unlawfully. She called them ICE agents, made up fake wannabe law enforcement during this press conference. I don't know if we have sound of it, if Tony can find it, but this is Philadelphia Sheriff Rochelle Bilal And she threatened to lock up any immigration and customs enforcement agents who come into our communities to commit a crime. She said this after Renee Good was shot to death by an ICE officer on Wednesday. And she said, she called ICE agents made up fake wannabe law enforcement officers, and the criminal in the White House will not be able to keep any ICE agents from going to jail if they commit a crime. She said, if any of them want to come into this city, Philadelphia, and commit a crime, you will not be able to hide. Nobody will whisk you off. You don't want this smoke because we will bring it to you. And so now you have mayors and sheriffs of big cities, the mayor of Minneapolis saying, get the F out. The sheriff of Philadelphia saying, don't come here and commit a crime. We're going to protect our citizens from you, ICE agents. Is that what we need? Is that the backlash? This people standing up like this?
Well, for those of you that weren't here in the beginning, when I said that I choose teams to root for based on their defiance of Trump, maybe I should be an Eagles fan after that.
So
I think that, look, we're not going to stop this with force.
Mm-hmm.
We just literally don't have the people, and that'll turn into a bloodbath. And not to try to put a cap on this, but we need 67 votes in the Senate to remove him. And, right now we have 47. So we have to find 20 votes somehow to remove this guy from office, assuming he would leave, right? I mean, the ISIS is private army right now. It's not the military. And I think the military would follow the Constitution. I don't think ICE has any idea. I guarantee you most of these guys couldn't tell you they could tell you the Second Amendment and that would be it. They don't know what they're doing. They're out of control. Local law enforcement. I mean, somebody should arrest this Jones guy. Is that his last name? The guy that shot Good, I believe, Jones.
I don't think it's Jones. I'm sorry. Jonathan Rice? Jonathan Rose? I forget. I'm sorry. I'll look it up while you're talking.
Not remembering that. But I mean, this guy should be arrested. It's obvious from what we've seen that there should be, at the very least, an investigation. And the federal government this was a state crime. This happened in the state of Minnesota.
Jonathan Ross. Sorry.
Jonathan Ross. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I say to myself, this guy should be, there should be an investigation. Witnesses should be brought forward. We take that tape, put it before a grand jury.
But the first thing they did, Chip, was deny Minnesota state investigators access to the bullet, to the crime scene, to any information at all, to try to keep them from doing their job. Because the FBI swept in and the FBI said, we're going to do this investigation. But does anybody believe that the
Where was the
FBI
federal crime?
do you believe that they'll come up with anything different than wasn't Jonathan Ross's fault?
Right. So, I mean, obviously, this is, but the difference here is we have this video.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is, again, the question is, though, will people see it on Fox? I don't watch Fox that often. I have a friend actually has her job is to watch Fox and report on it. My guess is, from what I've heard Hannity and Waters say, that I don't know what Laura Ingram's saying about it yet, but my guess is they're not allowed to show the video that shows him coming and shooting her. And then as she starts to pull away and shooting inside. And then, of course, the doctor, the African-American doctor that would not be allowed to help her.
Yep.
I think they knew she was dead. She got shot in the head, if I'm not mistaken. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't know how Americans process this, because this is, in the last 10 years, we turned from a nation with, some semblance of due diligence and compassion and understanding to a mob.
I look at, I don't know if you saw the second video that was recently released, which is from, I think, the ICE agent Ross's point of view, looking into the car.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Where she says, I'm not mad at you, dude. And then the shots are fired and he calls her the B word.
B, yeah.
And that was supposed to, I think, somehow make us feel like it wasn't her fault. But I don't think that managed to convince anybody that it wasn't more, even as I think I used the word earlier, more egregious than we already saw in the first video.
Yeah, Bill. If you recall, what was the first video that ever really changed a case? Oh, here it is. Let's watch this real quick. That's good in the car right there.
Trying to get around, waving other people past, right? You can see it from different angles.
Yeah.
And that's the thing about today, Chip, is that there's cameras everywhere. Everyone has a cell phone in their hand. There's people have home security systems. Businesses have home security systems. Officers have, cameras on their chests. People have dashboard cameras. There's this thing is filmed from every angle. And still, they're going to try to tell you that you didn't see what you saw.
There's another comedian, if I pass this along. We, of course, remember probably the most infamous crime scene video ever was the Rodney King beating, right?
Right.
And in the testimony of one of the defense attorneys for Officer Kuhn said that if you slow the video down, you can see that he was trying to get up and he could be a threat to them. And my friend, the comedian, said, yeah, and if you run it in reverse, it looks like they're trying to help him up, right?
It's true.
I mean, it's all in, again, the perspective. You can edit. There was another one like this. I remember in the shooting of a cop shot a guy in Missouri, an African-American. You remember that in St. Louis? I can't recall the names. I'm pulling a blank now. I apologize.
Are you talking about the man that had the foot on his neck?
No, that's a different one. Yeah. See, there's so many of them right now.
It's hard to keep track of our police shootings, Chip.
Yeah. And of course they can turn the shoulder cameras off, and that should be immediate firing right there. If you ever turn that off when you're in the middle of a case. So we have this video. We have a president and a vice president both saying that it was a justified shooting without any investigation. Right. This is not what you're supposed to say. Can you imagine anybody else ever saying this?
The Department of Homeland Security Secretary calling her a domestic terrorist.
Well, she shot her own dog in the face. So that woman's insane. And I mean, you look at this. I mean, Secretary of Education, it used to run the WWE. I mean, that's all you have to know about this entire administration.
At the clown show. Yes.
Or RFK Jr., in the latest vaccine reductions for children. And the measles epidemic that's, could take off. And measles kill people. Yep. They kill children. Your kid gets measles. It's anyway, MMR and all that stuff. We all look at all of this. And I go back to what Bannon said. They're throwing so much at us that, we're not even talking about Epstein before. And we're talking about grown men. Have you seen that Dershowitz thing where he goes, I kept my underwear on? He was on Epstein Island getting a massage. And his defense was, well, I kept my underwear on. So
no, I haven't seen that.
Oh, yeah. I don't know. You can see my videos at Really American on YouTube and just look at Chip Franklin and watch them. And I think that, it means a lot to me and everybody that's commenting on here to take the time, because I know we all have. I mean, look at this. I'm just scrolling through this. There's literally over 100 on here now, at least, of people, just so apoplectic. I mean, we just don't know. We're so lost in this world we're in now. This disintegration of values and integrity and morals, and we don't know. I mean, can that stuff come back? Can you bring it back? Or is this scorched earth? How do we deal with the 78 million people that voted for this guy? Sure, there's 240 million other people, but how do we deal with these people? Right. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if this is, after the Civil War, right, when the Emancipation Proclamation and African Americans were then allowed to run for office and vote. Right. Long before women. For my mom was born 2 years after women could vote. That's how close it was. Right.
Wow.
But looking at this and you say, back then, do you know this story about Rutherford B. Hayes? Can I digress?
Yeah, please tell me. Go ahead.
Okay. So blacks were allowed.
This is why I called you, Chip.
Blacks were allowed to run for Congress. I want to say this is 1876. Or 72, one of those two. And so Rutherford B. Hayes was running against a guy named Tilden. And neither one got enough votes to win, so it had to go to the House of Representatives. and they vote based on their legislature. So the legislature will all come up with a vote, and that counts as a vote for or against you, whoever you are, right? One of the two. So Hayes went to the South and said, if you vote for me, I will remove the government, the federal protection at polling places for Black people to vote, which they had to do because obviously, in their minds, the Civil War was still on for many of the people in the South. So when they pulled them, not only could Black people not vote anymore because they'd be beaten up, they couldn't run for office either for the same reason. So that was the beginning of Jim Crow. We said Black people had rights, but they didn't have rights. It was their rights were only on paper. The real world was invisible to the rest of us. And back then, of course, we didn't have television. But the early concept of radio still hadn't even come into play. So, today we have video. We have a video of a man with his knee on the neck of a man in Minnesota, George Floyd, watching him die. And I guarantee you, most people watch this. Do you think Trump said he won at one point that he would consider pardoning Chauvin if he could? Of course he can't. Although he did pardon Tina Peters, who tried to interfere with an election in Colorado, and of course he can't because it's a state crime.
They're trying to get the state officials to recognize a presidential pardon, which is asinine.
It's not going to happen, no. But I guess my point is that history is replete with incidents just like we're living through right now. What's changed today is it's not AI; it's simply just good liars. And the inability of people to get to the access to the truth because they watch one channel, and you look at CBS now and Barry Weiss, what she's done there. I'm surprised whenever I see anything that's critical of Trump, and look at ABC with Kimmel, ABC interviewed last night. They interviewed Trump about the Powell thing, right? And of course you got to push back. And somebody has to say, are you out of your freaking mind, dude? What's wrong with you?
Yep.
I mean, I think that person could be elected to any state office tomorrow if a journalist just said, hey, what are you lying for? We've seen it before in some of the press conferences where people call him out on his lies, but obviously, remember when he said that his uncle had taught Ted Kaczynski and he used to talk about it all the time? And there's no way Kaczynski would have been of age to go to school then at MIT. And he didn't go to MIT, he went to Harvard. So, we are in a twilight zone, right? And I don't know other than, people literally, again, hopefully we'll have a midterms. Right? That's not crazy to guess that Trump will try to interfere with that. He's already trying with, when he did in Texas.
We already tried, with the redistricting and, voter rules and everything else. Rhonda writes, America brought this horror upon itself by racism, now happening to, quote, good white folk, and everybody's surprised.
Yeah, I totally agree with her. Yep. Totally agree.
Mm-hmm.
But
here's the thing. If we can't be shocked, horrified that this happened, as Rhonda says, to a good white lady, then we won't be surprised if it happens to anybody.
Yeah.
Do we not care? Clearly we haven't cared about Black people for a long time. I say we in the general sense, not me personally, right? We haven't cared. We let it go on. We don't do anything to stop it. And now we have this white lady. So apparently it doesn't matter what color you are, as long as you're, if you dissent, you're fodder and fair game. Is that what this is? Who's angry? Why aren't we more angry?
It's a great question. I think that when it comes home and personal, people become angry. When a close friend or somebody that they care about dies. Mm-hmm. But there's so much that happens that's incremental. It's like cancer. The diagnosis of cancer doesn't hurt as much as the cancer is going to, but it makes you aware. Gene posted here a second ago about 8 of the 9 people that are involved in the decision making about the new ascension of beef to the top of the food,
the food chart.
Food chart. Yeah. Of course, cardiologists will tell you, no, it's not a good idea. I look at this and I think to myself, we're losing our ability to really follow and trust our instincts because of the noise. And there is a lot of noise, I mean, I read somewhere that I want to say 63% or 63 or 68% of Republicans don't believe in evolution. Now,
that seems like an awfully high number.
Right. But they don't believe it. They believe that they say it's just a theory. Well, gravity's a theory. Jump off an 18-story building. See how that works out for you. Right. Science is a constant investigation and a reexamination of what we know, and we learn more and move forward. We don't do that in politics because there's no money in it. There's no money in questioning things that are working, even if there's an underlying cancer involved. And, that's when Trump says, some people say maybe we should have a dictator, right? He'll play that. He'll lay that out there, and people will say yes, because this is the thing that kills me the most too, is you go down and you look at red states. Red states have, the highest rates of illiteracy, the highest rates of inability to access decent health care, educational standards. And I love it when people, like somebody sent me a note the other day saying Mississippi, their standards are up 40% and California is only up 6%. Well, when you look, when you say went up 40%, that's like we had 8 people that can read and now we have 12, right? Yeah. I mean, it's again, statistics are a great way to lie to people, and we see it done all the time. And I'm not saying this is just, I have a lot of good friends that are Republicans, that were Republicans, and I look at this and I think to myself, Rick Wilson and I talk a lot, and he's the Lincoln Project guy, right? And he gets like hundreds of death threats a month, hundreds. I don't know what happened, and maybe this has always been here, right? But back to Minnesota, if we can, for just a second. Do we have somebody?
Yeah. We have 2 minutes before we welcome Sarah.
Okay, so when we look at Minnesota and we ask ourselves this question, what next? What do we do, and how do we stop this from happening again? I don't want people hurt. So when I tell people we all need to be in the streets, that means that we have to, our message has to be visceral and it has to be out there. I don't literally mean you should go up to ICE agents and get hurt, because that's not going to work. We don't have the force to stop them, but we do still have a democracy or democratic republic. And the people who we should be putting fear into their hearts, I don't mean physically, but in every other way, are the Republican senators like Lindsey Graham. Josh Hawley, did you see this, where he turned against Trump too? You had five U.S. senators that said no to Trump, and 5 Republicans. And you look at and of course Murkowski and Collins and Young.
Are you talking about on Venezuela? Yeah.
So you've seen this happen. So that's where we got to go. We can't pick up arms. We can't do that. That's not going to work. We don't want to do that. Well, I don't want people to get hurt, but we do have to become involved, and we can become involved by scaring the hell out of them with emails and phone calls. They work. You send letters, you write a letter to a U.S. senator, somebody looks at it and goes, they look at that like as a on a chart, as something that means more than just another dot. This dot could mean thousands of people, because this person took the time to actually write a letter. So that's what when I say this to people, I don't want people to go out and get hurt. But that said, we have to work in mass too. We have to literally take it to the streets in a safe way when it's organized, like a No King's Day, right? When we got 40,000 people out there, they're not going to kill 40,000 people. They're not going to shoot 40,000 people. They will stand down. But again, it's got to be done right. And I think we're getting people now that are beginning, and a lot of them are Republicans, former Republicans like Kissinger, she here?
Okay. Yeah, she is here.
Okay.
I'd love to hear her thoughts on what happened in Minnesota as well. This is a woman who is an absolute powerhouse. She is an author, a best-selling author. She is a scholar. She is a journalist. Her books include The View from Flyover Country, Hiding in Plain Sight, They Knew, The Last American Road Trip. You can find her writing at sarahkendzior.substack.com, and you can find her here on Mondays. Sarah Kendzior, everybody, welcome to the show. Yay.
Thank
Hi.
you. Hi, how are you?
Sarah, this is Chip. Chip, this is Sarah.
Hi.
Hello, Sarah. Nice to meet you.
So what I want to start there. Thank you for the applause there. I want to start the conversation with a look at, we've been talking about what happened in Minnesota, about whether people are angry enough about, the lack of an investigation because it's the FBI that's taking over now. And so it doesn't feel like there's going to be any justice or resolution for this woman.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say I don't know why people should expect any, because there's a difference between expecting something and accepting something, and you should never accept what happened and just shrug it off and go on. You need to remember, you need to commemorate, and you should protest and fight back. At the same time, this is an overtly autocratic regime that has been so since Trump's first term, and before that, this is a continuation of crises of police brutality and of ICE brutality that date back decades. And in terms of law enforcement using violence against innocent civilians dates back to the founding of our country and has emerged in, various moments throughout our history in a more, vicious and brutal way. And this is one of those times.
Really, really scary. And I don't see that it will be resolved to a way that most people will walk away from it going, there was an arrest, or that someone has time has been served, or that justice has been served at all. So there it sits.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's too many predecessors for it. Everyone kind of forgets basically that the last 4 years were marked by inactivity because of Biden being the president. There were a lot of people who showed up in 2020 to protest for justice, to protest for civil rights. And then once Biden got in, kind of just, tapped out and thought, well, my job is done, and, and sat back. But killings continued. And before that, there was Ferguson, there were other, civil rights uprisings all across the country. And that energy went into, the time period of Trump's first term, which was actually the period of the largest amount of protests in American history, even more than during the civil rights movement in the 1960s. And, I live in St. Louis. I was at the Ferguson protests. I was friends with the protesters, many of whom are now dead. And what I saw afterwards was no meaningful change. A lot of committees were formed, a lot of documents were drawn up, but in terms of, is it safer here for Black folks? Is it safer here in particular for young Black men? No. And then what we have now is that net has expanded so that you see a white mom from Minneapolis also being killed. What they're telling us is that anyone is a target. And this was always true under Trump, but they're making it very blatant and very clear. And by, flagrantly not taking any kind of responsibility and not issuing any kind of apology for what they've done, they want to let us know that this can happen again. They're using Good as an example. They're making an example out of her murder to show that anybody can be grabbed, anybody can be executed on the street.
Sarah, I often like to look backwards in order to look forwards, and I look to Andrew Jackson's comments to the Supreme Court during Trail of Tears when they refused his order to remove Native Americans from their homes, in some cases hundreds of years. And he said, his quote, I'm going to paraphrase it, was, well, you can say what you want, but try to enforce it. And I feel like we're at that moment now as the midterms loom ahead. And I wonder if other than 67 votes, which we're going to need 20 more votes to get to at some point, is there any way to stop this? If Trump decides to declare some sort of martial law and stop the midterms, will this Republican Senate stand up? Because that honestly is at the Supreme Court even. And I really don't believe that Kavanaugh and Gorsuch and Barrett would would take part in that. I really don't. And I think that the votes are there to stop something like that. But again, he's created his own army now with ICE, and they're growing. And these are people that are not qualified to do anything other than to follow these orders. And that's it.
Yeah.
We remember what Milley said, he's threatened Milley's life. People forget about that. So this is, I don't want to frighten people unnecessarily, and I don't want people to go and get hurt either. And I just said this before you came on, we need to take this to the streets, both literally and throughout the existing, what we have left of this democratic republic, to stop this. And I hope I'm wrong. I'm hoping that Trump is just looking for a big paycheck and then maybe leave the country. But I don't know. And I'm not sure that the Republican Party understands what could happen.
Yeah, I mean, they should understand, because we've already lived through this with the first Trump administration, which ended in an attempted violent coup in which he declared himself to be the president, regardless what voters think. And it's that mentality that's going to continue throughout his term, whether the midterms or in the 2028 election, should there be one. I think the comparison to Jackson is very apt. Jackson was a president who would rewrite the rules so that he was no longer breaking them. Who frequently dishonored treaties, who practiced, incredible levels of violence against indigenous people, against others who were oppressed within the United States. Again, I live in St. Louis, and across the river from me is Alton, Illinois, where Elijah Lovejoy, who was an abolitionist preacher and journalist, was chased out of my city by mobs of white people who were angered that he was, at working as an abolitionist. They threw his press in the river, and and then they murdered him. And I was just the other day over at his gravesite, which looms over the town of Alton down by the river, thinking about how this history was repeating itself. And a lot of people, including white people, have put themselves in the line of fire to do what's right. And I think that's a noble thing. That was one of the things that Lovejoy said, is that regardless what happens, he would not abandon his post, because he knew full well the horrors. This is in 1838, by the way, to bring it back to Jackson, of this era. And I think in terms of an attitude to take, that's a good one, because it's grounded in reality, but it's bravely taking it on. But, I do think that the Supreme Court, other court officials, elected officials, will bow down to Trump, because the difference between Trump and Jackson is that this is a mafia state more than it is a white supremacist autocracy, or, the kind of Jacksonian pseudo-democracy that we've had then, or even have had in our, worst presidents beforehand. This is a level of corruption that is transnational and so entrenched in our institutions that there isn't really a corollary. You can see the traces of it in Reagan and Nixon, in others. But I think we're dealing with something new, which is a president who is fundamentally against the idea of the United States itself. He is a wartime president, despite what he says. Only the war is on the American people. He doesn't care if our country survives. He doesn't care if our citizens survive. He cares if he survives. And while the paycheck is a prime motivator for Trump, I think that's always been his foremost motivator, he's got a lot of different people behind him who are using Trump's malleability to reach their own goals. And that includes the Heritage Foundation and other groups that were behind Project 2025, who have used him to push an agenda that they've been thinking about for decades forward. That won't go away with Trump. And that's why I feel like people like Kavanaugh or Barrett or others who've long been in that fold will ultimately bow down to him. And of course, if they know full well, like everybody does, that if they don't do that, he will threaten them. He'll threaten their families. He'll threaten at the least their jobs and at the worst their lives. And that's the conditions that we are living under. And I don't want to unnecessarily frighten anyone either, but I do want to necessarily frighten people in the hopes that somebody comes up with some kind of solution to this, because really we've been dealing with it for well over a decade, and I kind of hope folks would have grasped it by now. And I think the average American person does, but our officials act like this is all brand new.
So let me jump in here real quick. So my godfather actually was a man named Plato Kacharis, who defended John Mitchell when after my mom had served with him when he was a U.S. district attorney. And he also often told me the story of Goldwater and them coming down to tell Nixon that he had to resign. And I know we have the Cheneys and the Kinzingers in the Republican Party that voted with Trump predominantly almost the entire 4 years from 16 to 20. But that would have been those people that would have went down there. What's changed in my mind is the inability for the people that watch Fox News to get the real truth, to get the real explanation of these. And they're complicated. We were talking earlier about, with Powell and Janet Yellen saying he has no idea what macroeconomics is. And, he doesn't understand. The tariffs is a grift. It has nothing to do with, the economy. These countries are probably channeling back money to his family and others for pulling tariffs off them. That's a whole nother thing. But the idea, though, that Trump could actually, again, orchestrate some kind of coup is the wrong word, although I think we're in the middle of it, a long coup. But how would he do this if, in fact, the Senate could see this? If the Senate sees this in August, I'm still a believer that we can find 20 votes to get to 67 and remove him. I think the House would definitely go along with that. But would he leave?
Yeah, I mean, I don't share your faith in the Senate just because, I do feel like we've seen all this before. This reminds me of a lot of the arguments folks were making back during the first term, where they assumed that the Republicans would come to their senses out of self-interest, if nothing else, because they know that under Trump, all they can be is, worthless little lackeys that just follow his orders, that retain no true power of their own, but are enthralled to his power and, have to work under his behest. And again, it's not really Trump. He's not the mastermind of this. He's not, dictating the geopolitics of this. You've got right-wing movements. You've got a traditional organized crime network that stretches across the world. You've got techno-fascists. You've got people like Elon Musk and Peter Thiel. It's like all the worst people in the world got together and saw a fantastic opportunity to break down the United States and sell it off for parts.
But let me just throw that in there real quick. Here's the thing that you can count on, is that they will F each other over at the first opportunity.
I wish the first opportunity was 10 years ago.
No. But my point is that there's no loyalty among these guys. Vance and Miller hate each other. They despise each other. And Miller right now is in control. I think Bannon and Miller are in control. At least that's the way I see it. And Miller is not capable. He's just not capable. And right now things are relatively smooth for these guys. If they see the kind of backlash that will happen, the appearance of a civil war, which is what we're talking about, right? I think that's when you see it fall apart. These are not smart people.
I think they're actually some of them. I think some of them are pretty smart. I think Bannon's pretty smart. I think Trump's smart about crime, smart about propaganda, may not be able to find central countries that he's declaring war on a map, but that doesn't matter because he's got other people to do that for him. He knows what he needs to know and nothing more. And I think that's true of a lot of people surrounding Trump. But I do think that there is a unique quality to Trump, which is this PR propaganda element in which, when he is no longer with us, the MAGA cult will have no clear place to go. Like you said, they're not going to follow Stephen Miller. Like, nobody wants that. Nobody's, looking for that. The same problem existed with Kushner, who is another major person behind the scenes. I don't think Bannon, he has kind of a limited popular appeal, more so than the other two, but still, I don't think folks are going to be rolling around for that. They've really got to find somebody with the charisma and with the following to match him, because when that doesn't happen, I think there will be this kind of infighting among these elites. But then you have to sort of pull the curtain back and think, well, who is really running this country? They have dismantled so much of the federal government. They have sold off, so many different elements, or put it kind of tacitly, through basically a kind of organizational structure that mirrors shell companies, where I feel like we're looking at, this bureau is owned by this person who is enthralled to this person who is run by this person, so it's hard to kind of trace back who is really running things. If you can untangle that network and kind of get to the bottom of it, then yeah, maybe we'll have a chance. I mean, the good news is that I think most people hate this. I think the vast majority of Americans, whether they identify as, Democrat, Republican, conservative, liberal, whatever, they hate the uncertainty of everyday life, the expense of everyday life, the violence of everyday life, the threats in everyday life, and the feeling that there isn't an American future. People want that feeling back. And whoever is able to capture that and is able to make people feel like there will be a future for them, there will be a future for their children, they could inherit that throne. And it is possible, I think, that MAGA and its following will dissolve. But the thing about a dictatorship is that it's a dictatorship. Like, they impose it. You might vote it in the first time, but then you're stuck with it, possibly for decades to come, regardless of the people's will. And so my hope is simply just that the people's will be followed.
One last thing. I just ordered your book while we were talking.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
I did, seriously. But I'm kind of curious, the 30,000 foot view of this includes China, Russia, North Korea, NATO, and of course this Greenland thing and how that plays out. Obviously there's the I guess the war aspect of this, but there's also the economics of this. And when people see their 401k disappear, which will happen, when people, and when water and roads aren't maintained. I mean, this is when people start to see that entropy start to kick in, they'll act, and I think that, that's one of the things we talk about now is like the people that we have to let people know what could happen without sounding like doomsayers and, some kind of, shock value. There is some real basic truths here that people need to understand. And I'm optimistic just because based on our past, which is naive at best. I understand. But what do you think? I mean, how will China and how will and Russia and how will our adversaries respond?
Well, I think our past is a mixed bag. I mean, that's the thing we always are confronting with, is that we have these wonderful ideals that are rarely fully practiced in reality. As for foreign countries, they're looking at this as, how can I take advantage of this situation? And then Trump is just basically holding out his hand and is like, here's how, I'm right here. Like, let's make a deal. It's not hidden. He doesn't care about, emoluments laws. He doesn't care about, any kind of typical transnational alliance. He doesn't care about being faithful to our traditional allies, whether it's NATO or Canada and Mexico. He doesn't care about potentially declaring war upon our neighbors. All of it is inverted. And we saw this the first term around, which is what is so frustrating. I mean, one of my deepest frustrations is that nothing was done about any of this in terms of holding people accountable during Biden's term under that DOJ. And it really needed to be, because like I said, this is a mafia state. They don't have shame. They don't care about laws. They don't care about elections. They're not concerned about any of that. They just want to get what they want, and they want to redivide up the world. I think, in light of climate change, in order to grab resources and to hoard it for themselves and their little groups of oligarchs and plutocrats. And they will actively do that through a president who has absolutely no regard for even our own country. This isn't even one of those bad wars where the president does something horrible and then Americans benefit through something like, lower gas prices. Here we get absolutely nothing, and the rest of the world is terrified by, our psychotic leadership, as they well should be. I wonder what they would do. I think about their perspective. Like, if I was a foreign country, I'd be really afraid of America right now, and our unpredictability and access to incredible amounts of weaponry, and seemingly, kind of no limits, no regards for human life. I would want to put a stop to it. And I'm getting a little worried about, how exactly a country would go about doing that when the traditional barriers, of international law have no meaning to Trump and his administration.
Well, we also have 1 million members in the military, though, right, Kim? I mean, we do have people that are sworn to uphold the Constitution who will not lie down. And I don't think
We
Trump.
hope. Fingers
Well, no,
crossed.
no, we do. Frankly,
We did last time. We did last
Yeah.
time when Pence stood up and did the right thing, right? We've gotten really lucky by the skin of our teeth to still have a country. But as more and more of the good people are shaved away, and the people that will bend over are the ones that are left in place, I'm feeling less and less confident about the way this is all going. But Sarah, I wanted to ask you this question because I saw this story pop up and you just kind of touched on it a little bit. And I had wished that I had your phone number to call you the minute I saw the headline. Trump says his own morality is his only limit on his power. I don't need international law, he said. So Trump says the only thing that can constrain him is his own morality. We got a problem.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was a kind of tongue-in-cheek confession because he's been very blunt about the fact that he has no morality. He thinks morality is for suckers, it's for losers and haters. And if you look at any other interview from Trump, he is very, upfront about that. He says the only thing to admire in a leader is strength, is brutality, disregard for any kind of ethics. So if he's saying, the only thing in the way of, incredible war and violence is my morality, what he's saying is, you're going to get war and violence. What is potentially in the way, though, is actually strength. I mean, he has this theory of war that is, unethical, but it is a theory and it is a kind of war that is practiced. And I do think there are foreign or possibly domestic leaders who maybe understand that the way to respond to him is through force. And the best kind of force, let me be clear here, I'm not talking about armed uprisings and things like that. I'm talking about legal containment. I don't know how this can possibly happen under a Trump administration where he in fact owns the legal apparatus through the DOJ, which he sees the attorney general as his personal attorney. That's why it was so important for him to be contained.
Well, Blanche literally is,
Biden,
right?
But what?
I mean, Blanche literally is, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's how, that's what Barr was. That's what they all are. And so he needs to be, I mean, and this is true for many tyrants around the world, like they need to be contained through arrest because they do not respond to any traditional other leverage, protests, elections, shame, morality. Like they don't have any of that. This applies for Putin. It applies to Netanyahu. It applies to, any dictator around the world. Trump has the temperament and ethics of an autocrat and would fully behave as an autocrat were it not for the remaining, dwindling parts of our institutions and the fact that, the United States has been a democracy for a very long time. That's not true of most dictatorships. Their experiences with democracy have often been fleeting. So we have certain expectations about things like freedom of speech, free assembly. They're trying to destroy those expectations. They're doing that, by things like murdering protesters, having ICE come out and do that. So it's important to, to stay strong to those previous expectations, even if you don't think anyone else is going to live up to them, and continue to fight back in that way. But my gosh, I mean, the thing I've worried about from the get-go is the court system, the DOJ, that type of apparatus, because that's the first thing traditionally that a dictator will grab, that in the military. And just as Kim was saying, they will purge it. They will make sure that the good people, the people loyal to law are gone, and the people loyal to the autocrat remain and are rewarded for that kind of service.
Can we talk for a moment? I'm sorry, Chip, did you want to say something? Because I was going to go to,
I was
going to Greenland, but go ahead.
I do think that there is still some kryptonite, and it's called Jeffrey Epstein.
Yes.
And I do believe that could melt through a lot of these obstacles. I'm not sure we'll ever see those files, but obviously there's some things in those files that Trump doesn't want out.
I mean, you don't even need to see those files. Like one thing, now that you ordered my book, you'll get the wonderful, fun, uplifting experience of reading it. I have the Epstein quote files in that book. I have the court documents in my book, Hiding in Plain Sight, of, the case in which Trump was accused of raping a 13-year-old girl procured by Jeffrey Epstein. That book came out in 2020 and was a bestseller on every list. Like, this is all publicly available material. And there is so much incriminating information about Epstein, Maxwell, Trump, their extended network that it should have brought them all down long ago. It in fact should have brought them down in 2015, 2016. Had that been tackled then or in the decades before when the victims first started coming forward, all of this could have been avoided. But one thing I wrote about in my book, They Knew, is that in a horrible way, Jeffrey Epstein holds this country together. I've had meaningful conversations with members of QAnon because they agreed with me about Jeffrey Epstein. They might agree with me about nothing else, but nobody likes a pedophile, predator, blackmailer monster. I mean, Americans can unify and agree on that point. And if people understand how Trump and others are implicated in this network, and if everybody who is implicated in this network is targeted in the same way, without any kind of partisanship or anything like that, but just, called out for what they've done and punished accordingly, maybe we will get somewhere. Because I do think that blackmail network exerted an incredible amount of control over how events have played out, both domestically and internationally, over the last, 10 to 15 years.
I said I was up at Huntington Beach and I saw Devin Nunes and I went up to him. I know. And I said to him, I said, does it bother you that when Epstein was convicted of having sex with a minor, that Alexander Acosta, who was the prosecutor, slapped him on the hand, and then later on Trump gave him a job in labor and then agriculture as the secretary? Do you see any connection there? And he goes, there's no connection whatsoever. And I said, no, there is a connection. There's a literal, you have to at least, and then of course somebody came and got him, moved him away. But it was interesting as I was talking to him to see his eyes. He knew the story and he knew there's nothing he could say about it. And I wonder now when you start going through this, and for example, the time I mentioned this earlier, when Trump lied about being on the plane, and then turns out he was on it 8 times, and again, of course, these poor women and what they went through, and to have to go through all this again, and to have people on the right, because of Fox News, make them out to be liars and whores and whatever else they want to say. If anybody, if there's anything in here that will last for me, it's Fox News. Not Lindsey Graham, it's Fox News and what they did and allowed these lies to propagate and to turn again. I honestly, everything starts with them, with Murdoch and what they decided to do to create their own Pravda. And it may be the thing that brings us down ultimately.
Yeah, possibly. I think that cable news in general has become this kind of thing of the past, especially for people like my age, or actually much, much younger than me, like people under 30 in particular. I don't think they have the dimmest awareness of these networks or how influential they were, say, a decade ago. So, now it's TikTok, YouTube, etc. And on those places, the Epstein story comes out. There's this new kind of emerging group of people who used to be big Trump supporters, people like Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, etc., that are very interested, they say, in uncovering the Epstein files. I don't know how selectively they're going to do that, but they certainly seem willing to look at it in regard to Trump. We've seen other people turn their back on Trump. The thing that frustrates me is that everyone's acting like, oh, we got to wait. We got to wait till all the files come out. I'm like, first of all, this is probably not files. My guess is that the most incriminating evidence is video. And I think they've waited until there is so much ubiquitous AI that the minute any kind of video comes out, everyone is going to say, oh, well, that's AI. Like that's.
Can I ask you a quick question? Do you believe Matthew Wolf when he said he saw the Polaroids?
Michael Wolf, you mean?
Michael Wolf, excuse me. Michael Wolf, when he saw the Polaroids of Trump with.
Yeah, Michael Wolf is another one who's like, a known gossip, fabulist to some extent. I was suspicious of him from the beginning, when Trump would just let him hang out in the White House in the beginning, and then he comes out with fire and fury. And, a central Trump tactic is to cover up crime with scandal. And that Michael Wolf book was very scandalous, but it didn't actually deal with crime. It didn't deal with things that could land Trump in prison and therefore contain him. So I viewed Wolf as somewhat of an accomplice. I don't know how a person can go around seeing that type of evidence and knowing the things that Wolf claims he knows in silence for years, for decades perhaps, and not feel the deepest amount of guilt and shame and horror at oneself in their complicity. I view him as a complicit actor, regardless of what he's doing now. But yeah, do I believe that there's possibly Polaroids of Trump and others, caught doing illegal, horrific things? I mean, yes, and the problem is that their attitude to getting caught historically has been, it doesn't matter as long as I'm not punished. I mean, they actually kind of like getting caught because it means they pulled one over on everybody, like, Roger Stone and others in Trump's fold. They overtly, laugh about their impunity, from prosecution. They love that. The thing is, though, is I think it's different when it's child rape. I think that this is so serious and it's so inherently revolting that the American people as a whole don't have any tolerance for this. And if there is hard proof, I think we've honestly seen quite enough proof. But if there is more, then I think that you will see more and more people turning on him, as we have been seeing, since about July or so, when this topic, reemerged in mainstream conversation.
It's almost time for us to let you go. But before we did, I wanted to ask you a question about the lashing out against other countries, because you knew that we would see wars, that this is a president of war, not of peace. But now we have the takeover of Venezuela. There was a picture that Trump posted over the weekend of himself saying, I am the new president of Venezuela. They're lashing out against Colombia and Cuba and Mexico. The quote over the weekend was, the United States will have Greenland one way or another, according to Trump, whether we've got to buy it or whether we have to send our military in. How frightening is this? Should this be to Americans?
It should be very
let alone
frightening.
how frightening it should be to the rest of the world.
Well, yeah. Again, like, these are ambitions Trump had in his first term. And I remember saying back then, please take the Greenland stuff seriously. Everyone was acting like this was some sort of ridiculous joke. Like, what would he even want with Greenland? And I was like, well, he wants minerals, he wants trade routes, he wants the inherent wealth of the land, he wants to kick people off it, he wants a base. I mean, there's all sorts of advantages to owning Greenland, and they just thought it was something that could not be done. It's important to look at Trump's backers. Look at Putin, who also has an interest in Greenland. Look at the Lauder family, Ronald Lauder, who has been a part of advising Trump on this. Again, a lot of these strategies don't emerge from Trump. As for Central America, this reminds me of like the Confederate desire to extend the United States south and take over, all of those countries when they thought that they could effectively succeed. And so, they're not operating within any of the normal limits of international law, to put it mildly. If they have a dream that sounds deranged, it is a dream they will nonetheless attempt to fulfill, regardless of the sovereignty of those nations, regardless of the lives of people living there. Again, I agree somewhat with Chip that I hope our military will look at this and reject it and, perhaps refuse to participate in these operations. But I think it's difficult for them to be in that position where they're told, above all, follow orders. And of course, there's, the threat of punishment looming, and Trump's punishment is incredibly severe. And I think that they're aware of that. But, it was having us take out Venezuela's president, just kind of pluck him out and send him to the United States is, a horror in its own right. And I think the only reason sort of chatter died down about it somewhat is that it was followed by another horror of ICE murdering a woman on the street. It's just one thing after another, and people kind of forget, but they're all part of a growing pattern of, we can do whatever horrific act we want and we will get away with it, unless we are forcibly stopped and contained.
Anything else, Chip?
No, I just, I think about, we didn't learn after the Treaty of Versailles. We didn't learn it after Afghanistan. We didn't learn it in Vietnam. You can't go in and move people from their homes easily. It never works out. It's not going to work out in Venezuela. It's not going to work out. We learned it in the banana wars in South America and Central America. These are people that deserve respect. They may not have cable TV with 200 channels, but they're good and they're great people. And they're the people that we forced to, when we went into Central America, and during the Contra time, and these people had to leave because there were gangs running their country, and they came to the United States. We took them in. They've contributed greatly to our GDP. They're great people. They commit crimes 1/12 of that of native-born Americans. They stay married. They don't get divorced. They're good with their children. They should be the perfect Americans, but their skin's the wrong color. And that's where we are. And I don't know, not to leave on a bummer note, but I think that, this is ironically something that all these evangelicals have to revisit. If they're really Christians and they really want to, toe the line, they got to revisit what they've become in the last 10 years.
Sarah Kendzior, thank you so much for being here. Sarah, on Mondays, we have her at 12 o'clock Pacific time on Mondays, and so grateful to you. You can find more of Sarah's writings and her work at sarahkendzior.substack.com. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. I'll get out of here before my dog drowns y'all out. Shut up.
They know it's time. Oh, love her. Buy her book. Swear to goodness.
Well, I just did. I bought it. Well,
which one did you get?
The one, the 30,000 view here on it, just got on Amazon.
She's got The View from Flyover Country.
That's what I got. That one.
Hiding in Plain Sight is really good. They knew you must read it. They knew you've got to buy it. The Last American Road Trip, read it this summer. So good. Again, sarahkendzior.substack.com, also sarahkendzior.com, and Tony will have a link to the books underneath the video from Sarah's interview today. I'm glad you were here for it, Chip. Awesome.
It's hard to write those books for two reasons. One, it's a lot of research, and two, things change so precipitously. So you have to write in a manner that encompasses these possible changes. If you write a column, people get it. When you write a book like that, it's difficult because you have to be you have to be able to foresee these things. It's crazy. I'm looking over here at the comments, and it's all over the place. We have people that basically I talk too much, which is true. I see a lot of those, but it is to me, it's fascinating to see and to be able to use social media in a way like this, where we can have these discussions and people can contribute with their thoughts. And we do read these. Even if we don't mention your name, we do. I know when I've done these shows before that these are valuable to hear people say that it's inspirational for us as a group. I used to say that a cynic was a skeptic with all the facts, but I think an optimist is a cynic with children, and I have children, and,
so do
and that's why my kids are mad as hell. They're young. They're young men now. They're not children anymore, and they're, they read it and they come to me every day with new stuff. And, one of them is ready to go out on the streets, and the other is just, invested in knowledge and getting as much as he can and passing it along to me. And, I write about this stuff 6 hours a day, for these videos. So, I mean, it's nice to speak to you and to Sarah and to others that are involved in this as well, and to hear from these people. So it's
Harry Magnan with the $5 super chat says, I love Chip. The investigation of Powell sounds like a comedy act gone wrong. Will Trump testify? He investigated personally.
Yeah,
right. Magnan. Jim Slayton with 5. It says, in my experience, Trump getting a nickname, giving a nickname, or getting a Trump nickname rather, is a badge of honor. And then we've got 20 from Beam Me Up Scotty. OMG Chip, pretty sure I caught your first KGO show on a Saturday waiting in a Safeway parking lot. I stayed engaged for almost the whole show, and security came to check on me sitting in the lot. Thank you for keeping the show together. Oh, that's nice. Thank you very much. I'm glad to have a KGO listener on board. Hilo Karen says, ICE murdering a white woman should be the tipping point for MAGAs, but will it be? Do they really believe that Trump, that it was the victim's fault? I sure hope they don't, Karen. I sure hope they don't.
But I've already heard that. They've already implied that it's her fault. No, not implied. They've said it. Trump and Kavanaugh. I mean, Vance. I don't think. I think that there's enough. And I really mean this. That there's so much competition between these people in the Trump circle that it won't go they won't all decide on the same direction, because they know that if you fall from those heights, it's fatal. So they're going to be very careful as they move forward with these ideas.
Five from Hollywood Cowgirl. Chip, I listen to you every morning on KGO during my work commute, and it's so great to see you here. A lot of love for you, Chip, today. Asley Petrus with a great name and a $50 contribution to the show. So nice to see Chip from the old KGO. That's awesome. Thank you so much.
And it's funny because, I mean, I wished, I had Nikki on when I met Nikki and I met Brett Burkhart, who is now down here in San Diego, by the way.
Yeah,
A
yeah.
victim of Trump World and CBS, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can we talk about that? Did you ever talk about that?
Yeah. Yeah, we did. We talked about it.
A lot, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, and I don't talk to you or Nikki near as much as I'd like to. I did send Nikki a note beginning of the game yesterday, you know, just telling her I was rooting for the Niners. And I'm always trying to get people to come down and see me in San Diego. That's for all you people as well listening right now. You know, I think what you know, what we're trying to do here is happening in a lot of areas, and maybe not on a YouTube show or wherever, you know, but in circles and in groups, and I think people are finding better ways now to talk to MAGA. I had a friend that I used to play golf with, and he voted for Trump in 2016, and you know, I disagreed with him, but we remained friends. And then when he backed him after 2020, and that I couldn't be friends with him anymore, you know, and my son sees his family occasionally, and not him per se. And I'm thinking about trying to reach out to him again, and say, come on, I had a next door neighbor who voted for Trump, and we just moved in, and we didn't know him that well. And now we're friends. And now he realizes what a mistake it was. He thought it would be, you know, something other than much different than it was.
I think, Chip, that it's easier to make the point when it's so blatant and racist and out in the open, and it's easier for people to see it in the light of day. And this is what I was going to bring this up with Sarah, but I want to show it to you as well, because there was a Labor Department slogan, you know, advertisement, where the picture is super, super Nazi-ish. I don't know if you happen to see this, but there's a lot of backlash over this. This is a message from the Department of Labor, and it says, "One homeland, one people, one heritage. Remember who you are. American." All right?
One heritage, really?
One homeland, one people, one heritage, American. And then it says, "Remember who you are." Well, right away, people were like, that sounds a lot like something from Nazi Germany. They had this thing that translates. It was Ein Volk, ein Reich, ein Führer. And it translates to one people, one realm, one leader. And there's a lot of people looking at this new Labor Department slogan saying there's a lot of echoes to what happened with Nazis there, and what the similar phrasing from white nationalist groups as well. Again, when they put stuff like this out there in the world, and it's so blatantly
just wrong.
It's wrong, and it's scary, because, I mean, isn't that the one thing you would think that America could rally around and go, Nazis equal bad. We don't want to be like that. We don't want any echoes of Nazis in America. And, you know, you have people already comparing the Trump administration to the Hitler, right? Whether you think that's valid or not. But then they come out with a slogan like this for a department under Trump. And what are people supposed to think?
Well, I mean, in some ways, I find it even more intriguing that we're allowing them to erase history.
Mm-hmm.
You know, all the mention of slavery and what happened, you know, the passage where, you know, tens of millions of people or millions, I don't know, tens of millions.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, the Holocaust. But, you know, then, you know, you have Stalin, you have Pol Pot and the Khmer Rouge, you have China, you have Japan. You know, I mean, our history is replete with, as I mentioned before, racism, with slavery. You know, you know, we killed what 25 million Native Americans. You know, I mean, it's insane, right? When you look at it, I mean, and people need to know those things. Kids need to know that. If we're going to get better, we have to know who we are and where we've come. And I think that's a big reason why there's been so much pushback, because people say, you know, I don't want to feel bad. I'm not trying to make you feel bad. I'm trying to enlighten you. And that's, I mean, you didn't do it. You know, you're a good person. So why would it bother you to hear about what we've done in the past? It would sadden me, but it'd make me wiser and more capable of making better decisions moving forward. It's not that hard. You know, I grew up in Catholic schools, and I'm an atheist today. I mean, there's so much good that religion has done for people. For me, I mean, I grew up without a dad, and I was a latchkey kid, and I got in trouble and stuff, and the nuns looked out after me. They also introduced me to quantum mechanics when I was 10 years old. So I had a different view. So I get it. I understand that, but when you have religions that are so dogmatic that they want to kill others that are different than them, a la Israel in Gaza, no matter how you feel about Israel's reaction over there, it's a night freaking mare, right? Mm-hmm. Right. So how do we get to the bottom of this? We get to the bottom of this by examining what we've done to get us to this point. You have to know the road you came on. I mean, so often the road, you look in your rearview mirror and that road is the road you're on now. I mean, and that's the problem. And so I think that, we have to figure a way through this with an understanding of how to talk to these 78 million people afterwards when Trump's gone.
Speaking of Trump being gone, we talked about wars in Venezuela, and we talked about the things that we should be paying attention to, the, crimes committed, the profiting off the presidency, all of these things that I think should take precedence rather than the price of eggs, right? But they said that's why we voted Trump in the last time. People were concerned about the price of eggs and the prices of groceries and the price of the gas pump. And we were all looking at our pocketbook thinking Trump would do better. Well, now, according to a story out of The Guardian, Democrats are going all in on the issue of affordability in a bid to turn voters against Trump. So in the midterm election, he's going to be hammered with, you haven't done anything to make life more affordable. People are still paying out the nose or the ear or wherever we're paying out. And so there's so much more
Can I jump in there real quick?
Outraged about. Yes, please.
So when you say that, and I think about James Carville's famous axiom, it's the economy, stupid, right?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Okay. And I voted for Clinton twice. But James Carville was ready to drag Monica Lewinsky, knowing the truth, but without the blue dress, and paint her out to be a whore, mm-hmm. like he did with Paula Jones and the others. So we, as a Democrat, we have to understand that our party's far from perfect, and we have a lot to fix and a lot to do. And I think that's a good way to approach MAGA and say, look, hey, I disagree with what you're doing, but we have our problems too. Let's find a way to make this work. What do we all want? And this is why I think Epstein is a kryptonite. We want a world our children can live peacefully and have a future. And so when you have men who are orchestrating attacks against young girls for whatever reason, I don't know if we can ever explain why men do that. But I mean, I think we have to ask ourselves a question, can we not at least start to agree on some of these fundamentals again? I mean, I mentioned evolution earlier and stuff. We can talk that crap through. I mean, that's, what we teach kids in schools, and we're talking about science. I mean, there's a lot of people, that I could sit here and, I mean, when I learned about the quantum world, it blew my mind. But I start talking to my wife and she's like, shut up. I don't want to hear about that. Right. So, I mean, there's ways to talk to people about things. And I'm guilty of this a lot. And you'll see it in my videos without condescending and getting angry. That's how we get out of this. It's not with bombs and guns, I don't think.
I don't know if it's with the Epstein issue, because I hear a lot of whataboutism on that. They'll go, oh, well, what about Clinton? See, look, he's as big of a creep as the other ones. Look at them all. Democrats and Republicans alike.
If he did on that island, put the son of a bitch in jail. Pardon me, but yeah, right. I mean,
but there's only one person sitting in the White House right now, right? That should be accountable, because yes, if whoever it was, hold them accountable, but don't, point the fingers around and not point the finger at Trump.
Yeah. Again, I think that one of the things that social media made it hard is to ascertain what's true, and AI is not helping that any either. But it's AI also has another side to it. It has the ability to get and to consolidate information, I think, in an honest and forthright way. Mm-hmm. And I think, ChatGPT does a good job of that, for the most part. It's not everything, It's not going to give you everything. When you ask a question, how you phrase the question will be how they answer it, which can, right?
What can skew your answer. Yeah.
Well, if I say, is President Trump the worst president ever, as opposed to which president performed with the lowest expectations or the worst results, right? I mean, there's a way to say this, and of course, adjectives. What is it? What did that? Voltaire said, if you see an adjective, kill it. Because the best way to communicate with people is as straightforward and simply as you can without coloring what you're trying to say. Just get them.
Sure.
Again, that's the best way to communicate. I love you is a simple thing to say to somebody, and everybody knows what it means. It's 3 words. Right. And the same with I hate you, so I mean, there's a fundamental way for us to communicate that social media has totally screwed up, and we'd allowed that. We did that ourselves for profit, and I think there's a way to fix that. I think there's a really way to get through that. I don't have the answer. Smarter people might come up with it, but I do believe that the conversation with Sarah sounded pretty dark. And I do believe that, as a father with children in this world, that we have to find a solution that doesn't involve some kind of civil war. I mean,
I should hope so. Yeah. I mean, that's the benefit, or that would be the benefit to all of us. But as a mother and an aunt with young men of, almost nearing military age, and looking at all the possibilities of places we could go to that Trump is threatening next, and military incursions. And I don't know how we would be involved in all these wars if there wasn't a draft, and looking at my kids thinking, are they next? It's very frightening. I think it's very frightening.
Again, though I go back to it. I'm not quite. I think that many of the. I think we're going to see. I do think we'll have a midterms. I think we'll have that will be. Trump will make it difficult, but I think that they will. The Democratic Party will have a successful midterm, and then they'll probably go after Trump in the impeachment process. And I think that when they do have the ability, like to do the stuff that Johnson does not allow. I mean, like for example, not allowing. I can't. Adelita's name again, the congresswoman from Arizona, not allowing her to be.
Adelita Grijalva.
Yeah, to allow her to be sworn in was obvious. Protecting Trump from the Epstein files. I mean, how did that conversation go down? Those are the kind of things you look at. And I mean, I said to Republicans ago, and they go, I can't explain it. They just couldn't explain it, And obviously Lindsey Graham. I have, how many pieces of tape do I have of him warning the world about Trump? Right. I mean, how many have we seen?
And then they flip flop. I mean, same thing, Marco Rubio. Same
Vance.
thing. Yeah. JD Vance. They all did it. Because a little taste of power is apparently a little bit more important.
I was intrigued that Rand Paul, I know we're running out of time, but I was intrigued that Rand Paul came out against the Venezuelan thing. And also I meant to mention this with Sarah, since she's from Missouri, that Hawley, the senator there, stood up to Trump, in that way. And of course, if you guys might remember, Hawley was this guy outside on January 6th, and they have that video of him running out like a 12-year-old from a bully, You know what I almost said there? I almost said schoolgirl. See, it shows you.
I see. Sometimes
some slides in there, but I caught myself anyway.
So I wanted to do some news, but you just mentioned January 6th, and I don't know if you saw this crazy story about this guy who is running for office in a county office in Florida, and his claim to fame is that he was the guy who grabbed Nancy Pelosi's podium
lectern,
and was running out with it, and his campaign logo is an outline of the picture of him with this podium running free. And he somehow thinks, after spending 75 days in prison and being pictured carrying Nancy Pelosi's podium from her office in the Capitol, and he was charged with assaulting an officer and civil disorder and other crimes before he got a Trump pardon. He says he filed to run for office on, there he is. Okay, there's this guy, Adam Johnson.
How much time did he do?
75 days, I believe. I'm not sure. I don't know.
Was he pardoned?
He's pardoned. He is filing to run as a Republican for an at-large seat on the Manatee County Commission. And again. So here's this guy. He said it's not a coincidence that he filed for office on January 6th, saying it's definitely good for getting the buzz out there. And his campaign logo is an outline of the viral photograph of him carrying the photo. So I mentioned it 75 days. That was a different guy who was charged with assaulting an officer who also ran for public office. But these people who tried to bring down our democratic process, who broke into our Capitol trying to stop the certification of a vote of the people's voice, they think that is their claim to fame and that people should vote for them because somehow they are, I don't know, champions of the First Amendment instead of the bringers down of democracy.
You know, Pamela Hemphill, right? Remember the granny?
Yes.
The MAGA granny, yeah. And who would not accept the pardon. She stayed in prison because she said she wanted to uphold the rule of law and acknowledge her wrongdoing despite the backlash she got from others. She said it would insult Capitol Police. This is the guy?
This is the guy with his matching shirts and his checkered family. Yeah.
Feel bad for those kids, right?
Right. I know. How many of them are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 kids?
There's an ad for condoms right there. God.
Fraud, waste, abuse, affordability, traffic. Oh,
I do believe, though, you know, when I look at this, and there's another guy named Rich Logis. I don't know. You're probably familiar with him. He runs a group called Leaving MAGA. And he was there on January the 6th. They didn't go in the Capitol, though. And I've talked to him many times. And, you know, I that's why, again, I go back to we have to find a way. And this sounds like Bill Maher, but it's one of the few things I agree with him on these days, that we have to understand that we're going to have to live with these people in this country. We're going to have to find a way to do it. And it's going to take a lot of strength on our side and theirs to a certain extent too, because I mean, you know, we've said some strong things about them, even though they're true, it doesn't mean that it doesn't still have, you know, we don't have to keep our foot on the gas forever on what happened on January the 6th. You know, this is not Gettysburg where 50,000 people died, right? We got through that. We somehow got this country together then. We can do it again. We just have to look at the things that we think are hurting us and find a way to make them work for us. And that would mean social media. It would mean AI. We have to find the things, the funny, we talk about Greenland, when she was talking about going to Greenland, I think the people forget about it. Greenland, it's going to take years. First of all, we have to build, it would cost billions of dollars to build it up, billions of dollars to get those minerals out. And guess where we have to send the minerals once we get out to refine them? China. Because we don't have, and they're the only people in the world that do it. I mean, there's no sense at all in taking Greenland, especially since Trump and the Republican Party, you know, unless we do a dictatorship and he's in off, and there's a dictator in office for 20 years and we have some sort of monarchy or some crazy stuff like that. You know, I mean, I find when you look at these things and you break them down, you go, wow. I mean, really, what would hurt us losing NATO? Well, how about all the intelligence we get about terror? You know, we don't know. I mean, the FBI, when Kash Patel came in and talked about taking apart the FBI, you think it's a coincidence that we haven't been hit since 9/11? No, it's the FBI. It's all the people in the FBI whose name you'll never hear. All the people DOJ got rid of that do the real work that protects this country. We fired the people that are the backbone of this country. So when people talk about DOJ, I get really angry. Because that was my family. My mom worked for the U.S. District Attorney's Office her entire life. My sisters two were teachers that worked in, and then two worked for the federal government. And the other teachers were teachers, ended up working for the federal government. They did really solid jobs, whether it was for commerce or labor or whatever. And are there redundancies in government that we could get rid of? Of course. Let's start there. Let's work together like that. But I don't think we can have this conversation right now, and that's the problem.
Quickly, before I want to ask you a question about coffee, tomorrow, Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado is Thursday, she's headed to the White House, according to reports. Trump is not endorsing her following the capture of Nicolas Maduro, but she has offered him her Nobel Peace Prize and saying that she would be willing to give it to him. Apparently, the Nobel Peace Prize Committee says, nope, you can't do that. The Norwegian Nobel Committee and Norwegian Nobel Institute are warning this award cannot be revoked, shared, or transferred to anyone else. She has expressed a desire, though, to give her Nobel Peace Prize to Trump, to, bend a knee to Trump, I guess, in hopes that maybe he'll give her some power so she can help her country. So trying to give it up for a good reason, maybe that, that she's able to help people. I don't know. But the Nobel Committee says you can't do that.
Yeah. I mean, Trump has this,
Yeah.
this is all about Obama, the Peace Prize thing. He just wants to he wants something so he can say, I got something that Obama got. She also blamed Jews for Maduro being in power. Did you see that? She's insane.
No, did she? Oh, I didn't know. Okay.
It's a Zionist plot to put him in power. I'm glad I'm not a Jew. I swear to God. I listened to more crazy crap about that. I mean, and when, somebody was actually telling me that Trump administration is not anti-Semitic. Did you see Charlottesville? The people Jews will not replace us. And I understand.
Look at the Labor Department thing we just showed, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah. Anyway, coffee. What? I love coffee.
Coffee. First, I'll say Sandy with 5. I could listen to Chip all day. Never missed a show on KGO. Please bring him on as a regular weekly guest. Look at that request for Trump.
Well, I did talk too much.
Not for Trump,
I'm
for
sure
Chip.
when Mark's back, he's going to get a lot of people going, dude, never have that guy on again.
No, not true at all.
Shut up. Well, I've been reading people who tell me that guy won't shut up.
I owe you a huge debt of gratitude for being here today. Huge.
Oh, man, it was great to see you again, Kim. It's always great to see you.
Are you a coffee drinker or a tea drinker?
I'm a coffee drinker. Yeah.
You're a coffee drinker. Well, do I have the thing for you? Have you ever had Coachella Valley coffee? Because if you have not, you need to. Mark says it is the best coffee that has ever gone past his lips. I'm a tea drinker. Love their teas. Loose leaf teas, amazing. From vanilla to mango tea to English breakfast tea to chai. All kinds of really good teas, and their coffees are amazing. Go to the website. It's CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. They have tasting notes. You can see how dark the roast is, what the flavors are, and they're really accurate.
I'm
and
ordering
really
right now.
Are you? Well, before you order,
I lose $30.
Make sure that you enter the code MARKT, MARKT, at checkout. That'll save you 10% off at the checkout. MARKT, no spaces.
I'm going to get the Elgato espresso right there.
Oh, he loves that one. He also loves the Ocotillo espresso. You can see on the package the beans. They'll tell you how dark or light the roast is. So good. So good. And again, I love the tea so much.
Great sponsor.
Really good sponsor. And they're such nice people, and they're very ethical in their business practices. We support them. They support us. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com, the code MARKT at checkout. And yeah, you got a new book and you got some coffee. Look at you. Look at you go. I love it. Seriously, Chip, thank you for being here. I so appreciate you.
And you're the best. One of the smartest people I know. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
You are the best. And I will call on you again. Thank you so much for filling in today, for sitting in Mark's seat. And I can't wait to talk to you again.
Thanks for everybody's comments.
Yeah, thank you. Tomorrow on the Mark Thompson Show, Mark Thompson returns. We will visit with David K. Johnston. He will be on the show. We'll talk politics with him.
Tell David I said hi, please. He's a good friend.
I will. Are you good friends? Okay, well, tell him you swung by the show as well. Legal expert and author June Carbone will be on the show, and it's going to be really good. The Mark Thompson Show with Mark Thompson tomorrow. But until we meet again, bye-bye. Bye, Chip. Thank you. Thank you, Tony.